Welcome to the Level Up Lifestyle, where we tell the real stories of people who overcame and elevated. In today's episode, Mike sits down with agency owner John David Mitchell. JD walks us through the highs and lows of growing up and growing into his own career path, from having a rude awakening out of college.
He said, yeah, you're either coming home or you're going to get a job, and you're out on your own.
To having to face his shortcomings as a leader.
You need to look yourself in the mirror, and you're the problem, not her.
To forging the mentality he needed for success.
Good leaders will find the good in someone and put them in a situation or give them an opportunity to win.
All of this coming up next on the Level Up Lifestyle.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Level Up Lifestyle podcast. I'm your host, Mike Sheets. We're coming to you live from Globe Life Studios in McKinney, Texas. And with me today, we have our very special guest, John David Mitchell. Hey, JD, how you doing?
Hey, man, I'm doing great, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you here. So John David, you are the son of Keith Mitchell.
Yeah.
To just level set who you are.
Don't like to tell many people that.
Right. Yeah. Well, you call him Keith, right? We'll get into that, right?
Yeah.
You grew up around this business. You worked your way into the business, worked your way up, and now you're a partner agency owner. How many offices do you guys have?
We have 7 right now.
7 offices, and that's across
from
4 states?
Yeah, 4 states from Pensacola, Florida, to Louisiana, Covington, Louisiana.
Okay.
So May 1st, we're actually opening up an 8th location in Milton, Florida.
Okay.
So, yeah,
okay.
Excited about
Great.
that.
So just kind of covering that whole I-10 corridor there, right? Yeah,
Sure.
working east to west. So, and you have about how many agents now?
We have about 350 agents in our agency and about 150 to 170 submitting every week.
Okay,
so,
great,
yeah.
Great. And so this year, you guys are going to write about how much would you say production?
Our goal's 12 million,
Okay.
but right now we're on track to write over a little over 10 million.
Okay,
so,
great.
Yeah.
Now that's awesome. Just tremendous success in your agency, and so I'm so excited to have you here today because your story is great because you've got a couple different perspectives, and we'll get into this, but the first perspective is just having grown up in the business, right? What that experience was like having both your parents working at Liberty National and experiencing success, and what that did for you in your childhood and opportunities that you had. And then you tried to kind of carve your own path after school and ended up back here, right?
Landed back here. That's right.
So let's get into that. Let's just kind of talk about you and how everything started. So just take up the growing up Mitchell story.
Yeah, so I really think that the story is going to relate to a lot of people in our company because, like you said, Mike, I grew up in the business. My grandfather, my mom, dad, everybody worked for the company, but I didn't necessarily take that career path right out of school.
Yeah.
I did my own thing, and much like many other people in our company, I came from a different industry.
Yeah.
So I was born in Opelika, Alabama. My grandfather actually had an agency there. That's where Keith started.
Yeah. So your grandfather was would have been a branch manager at that point, an agency owner now, but called them branch managers back then.
Actually, my mom was the first one that started working for Liberty National.
Yeah.
She was quote unquote the secretary. So
right.
I like to say she hired Keith into the business.
Yeah.
So.
Well, if people that are listening, if you go back and listen to Keith's story, it's pretty funny about that whole interaction of him trying to come in and get an interview and
schedule his interview.
Right. Yeah.
I'm sure we'll get into that later, but he kind of did the same thing with me. Except I had to fly in for my career briefing.
So growing up, childhood,
grew up. I was born, like I said, in Opelika, and we were living in Eufaula, Alabama at the time, and moved to Lawrenceburg. Had a short stint there. I think that was Keith's first office as a branch manager at the time. And really, only memory I have living there is I have a T-ball. I have a picture of me playing T-ball, and I was actually playing for Liberty National.
Okay.
So really excited about
part of the team for a while.
Yeah, no doubt. But I grew up in Jackson, Alabama. That's where I grew up. That's a couple hours north of Mobile. Moved there in 96, 97 time frame. And really, that's where I learned my competitiveness, I like to say, with dad growing up. My mom started really working for the company when we moved there as well.
Okay. So was there a moment as a kid where you maybe noticed that, okay, life is a little different in the Mitchell house than maybe with some of your friends in terms of opportunity or things you were doing, or parent
no
involvement and things like that? I mean, just kind of being on the child's end of the benefits of the career here.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think growing up in Jackson and growing up around the business, I learned two things. One, the competitiveness of things, and also the flexibility part of it. It was pretty cool to see mom and dad being able to work so hard, make a great living. I like to say I never went with, but I never went without.
Mm-hmm.
Times are not always great or tough. I know that. I remember my mom, she tells a story a lot about them going to a convention and not really knowing how they were going to pay for or put their credit card down for incidentals on the room, right? So
I think a lot of people can relate to that too. I mean, I remember my first convention, same kind of thing, right? It was, we brought cash because they said we're going to put you either need to bring like $200 cash or give them a credit card. I'm like, well, I'll just save up, $50 a week until you could do it.
Saving up for convention.
Right. It's crazy, but I think a lot of people had that. So there's another story about convention I want to get to later about your family, but keep going. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah. And I also saw the flexibility side of things. Like I said, I grew up in sports. Keith was not necessarily always my coach. He was always involved with other kids in the community. Mm-hmm. And I like to say that he coached my best friends more than he coached me. So he was always coaching and very involved. And it was cool to see, even at like practices and things, that they were always there. They never missed a game. The company and the opportunity gave them the ability to not necessarily work when they wanted to, but they made their own hours. They created their own schedule and provided a good living while doing so.
Yeah. So you saw that flexibility in that. Did it stand out to you? Hey, I see this over here and this here.
Sure. And I think that's why Keith and my mom too, my mom's been with the company 17 years to this month, and one of the cool things is that it allowed her to not only make her own schedule, but, her first year with the company, she made $83,000, and that was a lot of money 17 years ago. It's a lot of money today. Yeah. And, it was cool to see her being involved in my life, Morgan's life, and Whitney's life, my sister's, so much, again, in extracurricular activities. And I think that's why we had such a big friend group, or that's why they were so close with other people in the community, because they had time to spend with other children that didn't have necessarily parents with the flexibility that mine had.
Yeah, absolutely. So, now you said that you took a different career path. So you knew that your grandfather was in Liberty National. You moved to Tennessee for Liberty National. You moved back to Alabama. So this is pretty much, it's like you knew what your parents did. You knew what your grandpa did. So was it like, hey, I want to go do my own thing. I want to create my own mark, or I'm just not really sure, or what? I
was pretty unsure as a kid. Growing up, I knew that he was very involved. They were very involved in the community, like I said. And there's really one story that sticks out to me as a kid that I knew or exactly what Liberty National is all about. Okay. I was in sixth grade, I believe. It was like 12, 13 years old. Okay. Playing one of the kids on my little league baseball team. His mother drove buses for our elementary school. So she drove us home, everything like that. Yeah. And one day at practice, his dad came to Dad and was like, hey, I want to insure the family, so on and so forth. And I didn't know that at the time. Yeah. However, one day after school, his mom was driving a bus, and she passed away. She wrecked and passed away. Wow. And I wasn't really close with the kid on my team, but it was pretty tragic in our community. Keith quickly got a lot of things together, got with us and the team members, and told us to dress up and be ready to go to a funeral that week. And so we went to the funeral, and after the funeral, this is when it really hit me like how important Liberty National is and what we do. After the funeral, his father completely bypassed the whole family and came up to Dad and was hugging his neck and just crying. And I never understood why. And after the funeral, I asked him, I was like, Dad, why did he come up to you like that? You know, what was that? He's like, well, if you remember, he came to me at practice, wanted to insure his family, and he told him that, you know, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be able to pay for this funeral. I'd have lost my family if it wasn't for you.
Wow.
And so that's when I really found out what Liberty National is all about, and what my grandfather and what my dad, what this company, you know, what it's all about, and what it did. So
taking care of families.
Yeah. And so to back to the question, you know, I didn't really know leaving high school or graduating what I wanted to do. I knew that not necessarily the cool thing to do, but I knew that I wanted to go to college. My grandfather was really pushing for me to go to college, and I grew up playing sports. That was my thing.
What were the sports that you played?
I played baseball, football. I knew at a very young age I wasn't going to be the tallest or fastest guy on the team. So went home and I told Keith, I said, look, man, I was in 6th grade. I was like, dude, I got to play football. I'm a competitive. All my buddies are playing. You know, what am I going to do? Obviously I can't be the quarterback, but I got to get on the field. So I started kicking.
Okay.
Became a place kicker. Actually kicked my 8th grade year on varsity. So I worked really hard at that. And
wow.
For
What's the farthest field goal you could make
in a game or practice?
Well, both. Let's say in a game. What's your range?
In a game, 47.
Okay.
Yeah, game winners.
Pretty good.
You know,
47.
Yeah.
Right.
If you drive through Jackson, Mike, when you go over the bridge, you'll see a statue of me.
Of you. Yeah. The golden foot of Jackson.
Yeah, that's right.
What they call you. Right?
That's right.
What's the farthest you can kick with like no?
I had 53 yards in a competition one time. Really? Yeah. Oh, okay. So that's not off the ground. I will say for the record, that's not off the ground like in college. I was off of what they call a kicking block or a tee. Yeah,
gotcha.
So.
Okay. We had well, you were there at our agency owner meeting where we went to, we had like a Make Tomorrow Better initiative where we spent some time with an organization that provides physical therapy to to people that are going through physical challenges, a lot of veterans and things like that, right? So that was pretty cool. And then we went and had dinner inside AT&T Stadium, remember?
Yeah.
And got to go out onto the field.
Of course.
And I kicked a 12-yard field goal. I was feeling pretty good about that. That was
there you go.
That was pretty far, right?
We got on the field. Yeah.
It was an extra point. Yeah.
That was the first thing I did. I was like, I got to go do that. Yeah. So you can always say, hey, you kicked the extra point in the AT&T Stadium.
Yeah, that's right.
So.
Okay. So college is coming. Not sure what you're going to do. What's that like?
Yeah. So again, my grandfather, I obviously growing up playing baseball, I wanted to get a scholarship. I wanted to play college baseball. At the time I was going to play for the New York Yankees, just like every kid thinks.
Yeah.
And I listened to what my grandfather says and really take his advice and take it to heart. And he was really pushing me just to go get an education.
Yeah.
And I had a few scholarship offers to play at some smaller schools. And obviously being from Alabama, really you go one or two ways. You're either going to the University of Alabama or you're going to Auburn.
Yeah.
So my parents really were not pressuring me in any situation. Of course, Keith wanted me to go play sports. Well, that said, I knew I wanted to go to Alabama.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I didn't have the grades to get in.
Okay.
So I had to go to junior college.
Okay.
And so I figured out a way to get to Tuscaloosa. I wanted to go out on my own, get out on my own, and obviously start a career, And I went to junior college in Tuscaloosa for 2 years, worked my way up, got a scholarship to the junior college and was an ambassador for that program. Okay. And transferred to the University of Alabama as a sophomore and went to the university and had a few different internships, odds and end jobs,
Sure.
I remember when...
What are you going to school for at this
business.
point?
Business management. I got my master's in business and marketing. But I remember like my freshman year leaving home and Mom took me to school and Keith was like, hey, I'll see you later. It was kind of a mutual agreement. Like, hey, you're going up there to get a job. And I was like, nah, he's probably going to pay for everything. Like I'm free, And after 2 weeks up there living, I went to get some groceries, swiped my card and didn't have any money. Couldn't buy groceries. So I called him. I was like, hey, man, you don't mind spotting me a couple $100? I got to eat this week. School's starting. He's like, it's not the way it works. So,
okay.
He said, yeah, you're either coming home or you're going to get a job and you're out on your own. So I went down to the YMCA and got a job with the city, started working at an after-school program with underprivileged children.
Oh, okay.
So, started working in the community.
Okay, cool. So when you graduated college, what's the plan now?
So I graduated my undergrad degree and quickly realized, I wasn't ready to grow up. I was actually worked my way up to the director of the daycare program. So I was pretty pumped about that. The bills were paid. I didn't really have a vision of where I was going, much like a lot of people at a young age.
How did you get to become the director of the daycare? Is that the YMCA? Well,
here's the deal. I was a pretty good recruiter. So I recruited my roommate. To be my assistant. And really what I meant by that is I took a lot of time off. Sometimes I was late. Most periodically person to be there on time, So I was late sometimes, so I had to hire somebody to kind of fill in for me. So I hired my roommate, and the lady that was over the whole YMCA daycare system throughout the county, she fell in love with both of us. We love kids. He grew up, had a very similar background than me, and we always made an impact in any school system that we went into. So she promoted me I needed a summer job, and I was like, hey, I want to run the camps. And she promoted me to director, and he was my assistant director. Okay. And then we had to hire someone else because he started showing up late as well.
Well, I mean, he's following in the footsteps of his leader there, I guess.
That is
right
true.
now,
so. That is true. No shame there.
And so then, kind of, how do we get to, you had moved around a little bit. You kind of had a new career, and what's that period of time?
I couldn't find. I knew I wanted to get into sales. Wanted to get into an entrepreneur business, and the thing to do was to go out, get a salary, and in sales get a salary plus commission, get you some benefits, work your way up the corporate ladder. However, I couldn't find really the job that I wanted, so I went back to school. University of Alabama has the #1 sales program in the United States, and so I joined the sales program there. And the deal was when I was getting my master's, like the sales program will pay for it, but you have to interview and qualify to become like a sales director, which helps teach undergraduate classes. And so I interviewed, applied for that, and was actually one of 4 people chosen to do that. Okay. So that paid for my graduate school. Okay. And I got to teach classes and continue to work with underprivileged children there in Tuscaloosa. And actually what got me with a company that I started working for was I was teaching a class, and I was letting their recruiter come in and speak to the undergraduate students. Okay. And after class, he was like, hey, man, well, what is your plan? Right. And I was like, well, that's a good question. I really don't have one. Him and I went to dinner that night, and it was actually elevator sales. I didn't even know you could sell elevators. I knew
like an elevator in a building.
Yes, yes, in a building, and that's exactly what I said. I was like, wait, you can sell elevators, and it kind of intrigued me. And
who do you sell elevators to? I mean, a new construction, or do you
a little bit of both?
Elevator replacement.
That's one. There's 3 different business models: new construction, service and repair, and modernization. Okay. So service and repair is like servicing the existing ones. Modernization is more of your upgrades of your existing buildings, and obviously new construction is bidding on new construction jobs. So he explained all that to me, and I knew that in a couple months that I had to get a job, or because there's no more schooling, there's nothing. It was either that or move back to Jackson, Alabama, and I really didn't want to do that at the time. So I got a job and moved to Atlanta, Georgia, with a company.
Okay. So what, how did you get involved? I guess when you had an interview and set everything up, and it was like, here we go, or is this the person just recruited you over from?
Yeah, he recruited me, and he said, when you graduate, we're going to start the interview process. It's about 6 steps. Took me a couple months. Had to go to Atlanta a few times. Okay. It was funny actually. In the last interview, I was meeting with the president of the company, and he said, "I got one question left." And I was like, "Yes, sir." And he's like, how do I know that I'm not going to hire you today, and in 5 years from now, you're going to go back and work for Liberty National and help your dad run his business? And I said, sir, how do you know my family? He said, don't worry about that.
So he's done. So you didn't tell him?
No,
he's done his research.
I did not say a word. I did not say a word. But fortunately, I got the job. And like I tell many people.
Wonder if he's listening to this today.
Maybe.
Maybe. Okay, so you got the job.
Yeah.
Would you remember what you told him? Like, oh, I'm not going to.
Yeah, I was like, no, I was just stunned. I was like, no, sir, that's not going to happen. Sorry.
Yeah.
Moved to Atlanta, started working for this company, did really well. Spent 6 or 8 months there, got quickly promoted to another position with a company in Memphis, Tennessee.
Okay.
So moved to Memphis, loved Memphis. Again, my goal was to continue to move up. It wasn't to be still. That was instilled with me at a young age. So anything worth having comes hard work. So I wanted to continue to move up the corporate ladder and the sales ladder within that organization. And so I did so. I spent 2 years in Memphis, got promoted again to Houston, Texas, which at that time was the largest office in North America for the company in the position that I was in.
Yeah.
And did well in Houston and got promoted to the number 1 spot. This is my 4th promotion within like 3 years at this company. Was making great money, Mike. 6 figures, credit card, car, you name it.
Yeah.
My wife now, Samantha, she actually moved out. She moved from Atlanta to Houston.
Okay.
So she moved out there. Life was good. We got engaged. And, I was always on the outside looking in. I really saw over the years, even in college, the transformation that the company was going through.
Liberty National.
Yeah. Saw what you guys were doing. I saw what was going on in our agency and the growth. And it was in about midway through 2020, I was kind of starting to feel stuck. I made it to the top in this company pretty quick, and I didn't really have any direction, and it was after.
Well, how did COVID impact the business too? Because you think like
tough.
people are working from home, so there's not a need for an elevator. I mean, they're not, going into these large buildings.
Especially for new construction.
Yeah.
New construction, people weren't building buildings, you know. So that really hurt that side of the business. However, on the flip side, it did help the modernization side of things because buildings were empty. You can go in, shut the elevator off, and actually do an upgrade because it takes 6, 8, 12 months to upgrade an elevator. And obviously when the building's occupied, it's tough to do, right?
Okay.
So it had a pretty big impact on 2 aspects of the 3 parts of the business.
What was it about that was making you feel like you were stuck or you were kind of capped out?
I felt like I was at the top and I knew there was more, if that makes sense. Like I was there, I was making the money. I had the job, I had the salary plus commission, but I just felt like there was more for me out there, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And I knew, honestly, in the company, like there's, if you want to make $1 million, you're probably going to have to be the CEO of this company. And, I looked at Liberty National. It's like, well, there's a lot of people making 7-figure incomes that aren't the CEO of the company. So I have a better opportunity to do it there as well. And really what the turning point was for Samantha and I to move home was we were eating dinner one night. I just closed a $2 million deal, like one of the biggest sales I'd ever made. Yeah. And she could tell something was up. And I mean, she was like, let's do it. And she knew. And she's like, let's do it. Let's quit our jobs and move home. And, it's pretty scary. Yeah. And that's essentially that spring of 2020 is when we started thinking about it. I went to an agency owner meeting as a guest. Okay. And I think that that did it. So that did the trick.
Okay. So it just like call up Keith like, hey, here we go. Like, ready in? Or?
And then the later in that summer, we had been talking about it back and forth. The cool thing is he never put pressure on me to come back. But he knew, I think he knew I wanted to early on in that year. Being number 1 in that company, it's just like anything. You're going to be number 1, you're going to be the first one there and last one to leave most of the time. And I was in this company. Yeah. And one day, it was on a Tuesday. I'll never forget this. It was on a Tuesday. I went into the office, unlocked the door. It's the middle of COVID. Unlocked the door, sat down at my desk, started doing my thing. I wanted to take a coffee break about 10 o'clock. Yep. So I did. And as I was getting up out of my desk, walking to the coffee shop across the street, someone on my team was walking into work. And right then.
At 10 a.m.
At 10 a.m.
Yeah.
Right then I realized.
Crack of 10.
The guy that they're paying me, the guy in first place, the same thing they're paying the guy in last place. Yeah. I wasn't worth anything to him. And I walked outside. I didn't go to the coffee shop. I walked outside. I picked up the phone. I called him. I said, I'm coming home. He said, for what? I said, I'm coming home to work at Globe Life Liberty National. I want to interview. He said, cool, be here Wednesday at 1:00 for a career briefing. Swear that was his exact words. I called Samantha.
Not, okay, you're hired. Let's great. No, well, we gotta go through this interview process here then.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he wasn't there, by the way. So,
I think that's what happened to him. Yeah. Okay.
He wasn't there.
So you had to go book a flight, flew home.
Right. Flew home. Samantha and I flew home, went into the Mobile office, sat through a career briefing.
Who did the career briefing?
Brandon Carter.
Oh, really?
Yes. Okay. Brandon Carter doing a career briefing.
Okay.
So, flew back. Samantha and I packed our bags, and in September 2020, we moved home.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's how we got here.
That's how you got started.
Yep.
So, what was it like now you've transitioned to Liberty? Did you find success immediately? Was it a challenge?
Yeah.
Were you kind of like, oh, well, now you're just the boss's son? So like, I mean, what was that experience like?
Yeah, it was different. You know, I was really, man, I'm just lay it all out there. I was really nervous. I just left a 6-figure income.
Yeah.
My wife or my fiance at the time was making a great living too. Everything was good. And I just cut all that off.
You had salary plus
commission,
6 figures guaranteed, basically, whether you get there at 8 a.m. or 10 a.m.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go work 100% commission, 1099 insurance sales.
Yeah. So that was a big step in my life. Yeah. And you know, we thought like, hey, if we're going to do it, let's do it. If we're worth more than what we say, we got to try it.
And do it now.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. The time is never right. The time is now.
Right. Yeah.
And it was nerve-wracking. You know, we moved home and we moved to Mobile, Alabama, and her parents still lived in Jackson.
Okay.
And mom and dad actually lived in Jackson as well. There was an office. So we had a Mobile location that was about 15 minutes from where I live. So
it's perfect. You just drive right there.
Yeah. That's what I thought. So I call Keith, starting on Monday, fly in, we move, get moved in, everything's good, takes about a week. So Sunday night, I call him the Sunday night before I get my first day. Fired up, got my clothes laid out, the whole 9 yards. You know?
Tie and everything, ready to go.
Yeah, ready to go.
Yeah.
And I call him like, hey, what time are you going to be at the office on Monday? I'm excited for the meeting. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, I'm going to Mobile. He's like, you're not going to that Mobile office. I was like, sir? He's like, no, you can go to the Mississippi office. I'm going to the Mobile office. I said, Dad, I moved back from Houston, Texas, and moved 10 minutes away from one of your offices so I can go to work there. He's like, yeah, that's not the plan.
But that's the hub, right?
Yeah.
The Mobile. That's
that was
the
our,
main office.
Our home office, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So he sent me to Ocean Springs.
Which is how far?
Ocean Springs is about an hour and 20 minutes from where I live.
Longer commute now.
So, yes. So I had a lot to think about.
Why do you think he did that?
For a couple of reasons. One, he wanted me to learn the business on my own.
Okay.
You know, and what you said earlier, you the boss's kid. It's never been like that, and it never will be like that. You know, and both offices, we had 3 or 4 offices at the time. Every office was had its strong points, and we had a very strong training program at that time in Ocean Springs. So I think it was for training purposes. And again, he wanted me to get out on my own. He didn't want me to come in and sit under him during a meeting. Like, it's not what it was about.
Yeah.
And it's still not about that.
Yeah.
So,
so starting out as an agent.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That was it.
It wasn't like, hey, now you're an AD. We're going to give you people. No.
Even before then at the Christmas party, like the Christmas party a couple weeks before I started, you know, he said, I'm going to lay this out here. This isn't going to come between our relationship. Me and Keith, as many people know, we're best friends.
Yeah.
Right. I talked to him more than I talk to anybody, vice versa. And we shook hands. He said, hey, that you're going to get a shot just like everybody else. I want you to know that if this doesn't work out, it's not going to affect our relationship, and I need a handshake on that. And he said, it's not for everybody. I'm just going to be honest. And so we shook hands, and that put even more fuel to the fire right there.
To make it work?
Yeah. If I wanted to prove somebody anything, I was going to prove to him that I could do it. Yeah. Like I did on the phone when I called him. I said, I want a shot. Yeah. So call him, says, no, you're not coming to Mobile. Drive your butt to Mississippi, get in training. So start as an agent. And had my first call clinic in Mississippi, and really understood early on the coolest thing about it was the process and systems that he has been a part of and he built over the last 25 years at that time, or 20 years at that time. There were so many young people in the organization that was just building off the shoulders of that. And I just kind of came in and fell in line, if that makes sense.
Yeah. How important is having that process from your perspective as a new person? Like if you're a leader of an organization, to have a process that somebody new coming in can just latch onto and follow through?
I think it's make or break. I saw something on the way over here this morning that's like talked about systems and processes. Like if you want to make $1 million business, it's like be a good leader. If you want to make a $10 million business, have good systems. And I think that is really important, especially in our business. It's make or break. That if we bring someone in, including myself, I don't think I would have made it, or I don't think I'd have been sitting here if we wouldn't have had a process in place for me to come in, being able to learn scripts, train properly, do call clinic 2 days a week, and really set myself up for success and set people up from outside of the industry that doesn't have any insurance experience. Hell, I didn't know anything about life insurance, or insurance period, until that Monday, then when I started. But I think it's really important to have, especially for people outside the industry coming in with no experience.
Well, so many times, right? Like people, they feel like they do things really well, and they want to control it, and they want to be in charge, and you had to let go in a way and build a system because, in this example, you're an hour and a half away. If the person in charge, whether it's Keith or whoever, is like, well, I need to have a hand in all the training and all the things and not build it out in a system you can inspect, you can only impact a few people, right? I mean, you're limited in your capacity.
Yeah.
And
you're capped.
You're capped. Yeah, you're capped at what you can do.
For sure.
And the system just, if it works, which it does, right? Like you said, you got 20 plus years of growth to get to this point. And so you're coming in like 2021.
Yeah, 2020, 2021,
okay.
yeah.
And that's, things are really taking off in the Mitchell agency. That system lets somebody plug in to what it takes to be successful. So now it's not like I need to train you. It's that I just need to hold the system accountable.
Yeah.
And you can do that versus train 100 people.
For sure. And it made me realize as a new agent, like I was like, okay, I come in, I'm like, I see all these people so successful, I see the transformation of the agency and the company, and I look at it, I'm like, okay, they're all doing the same thing. Some of them are just doing the ordinary things a little extra, which is giving them those extraordinary results.
Right.
I can do that. And it gave me a lot of confidence as a new agent. It's like, okay, I'm not going to come in here and reinvent the wheel, even though I tried.
Everybody does.
Yeah, I tried. But I'm not going to come in here and reinvent the wheel. I'm just going to essentially get in line and build off the shoulders and walk down the path that's been paved for the last 26 years as the agency's been going on. So. Yeah.
Well, it's when you look at some people that succeed, I remember being a new agent thinking like, wow, what is that person doing? They're making all this money. They're doing all this great stuff. Like they're winning the awards. They're being recognized. Like I want that. And then you come to find out, like if you have a system and a process, it's like, well, they're just doing more of it.
Yep.
They're just outworking me. Right. They're
100%.
just out doing more of it. Like, just go do more of it. Don't figure it out. It's not anything special. It's not like you reach a certain point where you're like, okay, now here, John David, here's the actual super secret. Here's the super secret script. Right. Yeah. We don't give that to everybody. But no, it's just do more of a consistent thing.
Yep. No doubt. And of course, I'm not saying it's perfect, right? Our agency isn't perfect. We make many mistakes every day, but we learn from those mistakes and try to continue to grow. And especially early on, like I said, reinvent the wheel. Like I'll give you an example of something I tried to do. Like came in, was really good on the phones, setting appointments. And I knew it started in the individual market. The more sets you have, it's going to lead to more presentations, which will lead to more money.
Yeah.
And that's what I was told. So I started setting as many appointments as I could after 4 p.m. And you set Monday for Tuesday and Wednesday, and then come in on Thursday and set for Friday and Saturday. But I had the bright idea. My first couple of weeks was like, I'm done with training. I got this. I'm going to set for Monday, set for all week. Not do a Thursday call clinic. Try to reinvent the wheel, see more people.
How'd that go?
Yeah, that didn't go over well at all. So I think my presentation count was cut in half. My activity was cut in half. And so was my pride. Like that hurt. It's discouraging. The business is already hard enough, and I made it harder. Early on. Yeah. So definitely had to get right back on systems. And, Keith, one of the things that makes him such a great leader is I don't want to say he lets you make mistakes, but he'll he'll let you walk down a path and learn from it, maybe before you fall off the path.
Yeah.
And that was the time that he said, okay, if you're going to reinvent the wheel here, big man, I'm gonna let you do it. You
Go
said,
ahead.
yeah, you do it. Now the other 150 people at the time, they're not doing it, but you try it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So,
and it worked out how it did.
Yeah.
Guys, that's so relatable too. And there's probably some people listening to this thinking like, man, there's some things that this company does. Like I would think that we should do it this way or that way. This is the better way to do it. This should be the way that they suggest to do it versus this and that. And I remember being that new agent thinking those things. And now, being here almost 20 years, it's so simple.
Yeah.
And the process works. And, I'll tell people every now and then, like, I love your perspective that you have from the success that you've had at other places, but it doesn't necessarily translate here. And we have 125 years of company history and really like the last 15 years and kind of this model.
Yeah.
And we've thought about other ways to do it. So at some point, if there's a better way, it'd be part of it. And, not for nothing, you've been here for 6 months. And we've been here for 125 years. So
exactly.
Let's just lean into the system versus leaning out.
That's right.
That's
right.
Prove the system right.
That's right. That's right. Follow it. Let it produce its own results.
So as an agent, you're kind of testing the waters a little bit, trying to move around and this. And when did you start like getting results to like maybe move into leadership?
So after a couple weeks in, I hit the ground running again. Was pretty good on the phone, setting appointments, and then I went through that dip because I tried to reinvent the wheel, and got back on systems after being here for about a month or so, and got with Keith, and he said, what about the supervisor role? And I had some leadership experience from my last position that with the other company I worked for, so I think that helped, and just not necessarily being with another company, but that just helped me coming in, wanting to accelerate into leadership, I guess I should say. So after about a month of being with the company, signed my supervising contract. And this is where I really learned a lot about what you just talked about, the system, and teaching people the system, not the way that I think it should be done. After about a month of being here, became a supervisor and quickly started recruiting and building a team.
So did you do a little bit of that when you were in that supervising role of the SA of like, well, I know that's the system, but let's do.
Yeah. And I think this is where I learned most life lessons about Liberty National and myself and my leadership lid and my leadership style. Quickly realized that you couldn't really blanket manage. You can't blanket train just because it's the best way that I learned. It's not the best way that I can teach you. You're going to learn different than this person, so on and so forth. I reinvented the wheel and with training as well. Failed. I look back and think of all the people that I feel like I failed due to me being one-sided in terms of training and not following a process, not making it simple. Just because it's easy for me doesn't mean that it's easy for others. Yeah. And just one specifically, I remember. If you know Keith, he likes to talk and recruit a lot.
Sure.
And we were out one night, and him and I, it was actually the whole family, and our waitress, we got her coming in for an interview, and I was just my first agent. And she comes in for an interview. We end up hiring her. Everything's great. After a couple of days of training her, I pull over. I pick up the phone. I call him. I get out of the car. I'm like, I'll be right back. And I get out of the car. I'm like, hey, bring this girl back to the office. She can't learn anything, and she just don't know. I'm teaching her everything. We've closed 2 sales. She doesn't know anything. And he said, well, maybe you need to look yourself in the mirror, and you're the problem, not her. Have you asked her how she likes to learn? Have you asked her how she can train? What's the best way for her to learn? How do you want her to hold her account? How do you want her to hold herself accountable? And I was just like, no, I didn't. So I got back in the car and I said, ma'am, I apologize that I may have been teaching you the way that I wanted you to learn. Do you mind telling me what's the best way you learn? And she said, yeah, I like to write everything down and record it. And so I was like, oh gosh, pull out your phone, push record, let's go to work. And she started writing everything down. And about 5 weeks later, she became a supervisor.
Wow.
Yep. She got permanently licensed, came in and absolutely killed it. She's still with us today.
Wow. So. Wow. Does she know what that call was about?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now she does. So they were like calling AAA before, right?
Just hang on just a second.
Just hold on. I'll be right back. Yeah. Oh, that's funny. And there's no bad students, only bad teachers.
Yeah.
Sometimes, or more times than not, probably,
No doubt.
right? So I think that's a good lesson for you and for people that are in that role now.
And it's easy in our business. It's easy for our trainers, even myself. And I struggle with this. We all do. It's easy to find the bad in someone, right? It's easy to find, this person can't learn it. They can't learn it because they don't know the scripts, or they're not going to be good because they don't like to do field activity. It's hard for a leader, and good leaders do this. It's something I figured out just being in the company. Good leaders will find the good in someone and put them in a situation or give them an opportunity to win. They'll find the best and really exploit what they're good at and focus on that rather than what they're not.
Put them in position to win.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Good. When did the idea of being an agency owner come to mind? Had you thought maybe you'll partner with Keith or you'll take it over if Keith retires when you first started? Or was it like, I'm going to be in leadership here and just kind of see where it goes? Or when did the idea start to come up?
It kind of was like I wanted to make a name for myself.
Okay.
And that was really big. Obviously, Keith's been with the company for like 60 years, I feel like. He's been with the company for a while.
Right.
My mom with the company for, 12, 13 years at that time. I wanted to come in and make a name for myself. And early on, made some noise in our agency, had some success, had some great trainers. The people still with us, Sam Bickett, still with us, great trainer. Saw a lot of people being successful, and I knew that I could do that. So when I got into the supervisor role and started recruiting a team, I really was a solid recruiter, but I was a better trainer, and I had a really high retention rate. And as I grew my team, that's when I kind of felt, Mike, like as a supervisor, like I can do this.
Yeah.
I can, this is my career. I think I guess
That's really when it clicked. So you were still kind of like, we'll see what happens up until this point.
Yeah, no doubt. And Samantha support system, pushing me at home, that helps a lot. I think that's really important. And that had a lot to do with the drive that I had to make a name for myself. And so early on in my supervisor career is really when I felt that, hey, I want to get to AD, I want to get to AO, I want to keep going. It really clicked for me.
Yeah. Well, and that was part of the reason why you left the other place, right? Where you felt like you were capped.
No doubt. No doubt. There was nowhere else to go.
Yeah. Yeah. So process of becoming an agency owner. And now you are the partner agency owner. What is, if you were to look back on just that SA to AO, if there's something that you feel like that was the most instrumental in helping you get to that point and move into the agency owner, what do you think?
Man, we could talk about that forever, but I would say getting uncomfortable.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is doing things that you're not supposed to do. Doing things that if you're a supervisor and they say not to recruit your own team. Doing things that people in the contract above you are doing. Getting uncomfortable or getting comfortable being uncomfortable and doing things that's not necessarily your job duty to grow your business. The time is now.
Yeah.
The time is now. And understanding that if you're a supervisor in the company, the only thing that's holding you back could be 10 recruits, 10 of your personal recruits, and a little bit more effort from yourself. So
yeah, well, that's a great point. You kind of think about if you're a supervising agent, right, which is the first level in leadership.
Yeah,
and you think like a supervising agent, and your role as an SA is to have people come in to your car.
That's right,
and train them on what we do, whether you're worksite or individual. Just train them, set them up for success, and then once off that's done, off they go, right? Yeah, the kids go to college now, right? You have a short time of raising them.
Yeah.
And if you think about your role and you're only thinking about like being an SA, then I always felt like you're just going to be a pretty good SA.
Yeah.
But if you're a supervising agent and you think about the next level, which at this time in your career is that agency director position.
Yep.
And if I'm an SA, but I'm thinking like an agency director, and I'm doing the things that an agency director might do, even though it's not required or not required, but a core of what I should be doing as an SA, and I'm doing that anyway, then I feel that makes you a great SA.
Yep.
Because now you're going above and beyond.
Sets you apart.
It does, yeah. But it also sets your results apart. And then you become an agency director, And if you start thinking like an agency owner, as an agency director, it's going to make you a great agency director because you have that ownership in what you're doing. So just thinking a level above where you are is always a great way to push yourself up. And I think that's where you talk about getting uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And doing things that you might not really think that you should be doing, or people are going to be like, well, why is he doing that?
He in here? Why is this essay attending CLBs?
Yeah.
Why is he sitting in my first interviews?
Yeah.
Little things like that go a long way. And again, I mentioned this earlier, it's not necessarily unordinary things, it's ordinary things that you're doing just a little extra to help you produce those extra results.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so do that. If you're an essay right now and you're thinking, I want to move up. I want to be a GA. I'm a GA. I want to be an AD. Go hang out with the ADs in your agency.
That's right.
What are the things that they're doing? And you don't have to do everything. Don't stop doing what you're doing, right? Because you need to be there. But start finding that one or two things that the people in that next level are doing that you're not doing. And pretty soon, just by nature, it connects you.
That's right. Don't stop doing what got you to where you are.
Right.
Implement little changes each and every week.
Right.
And little baby steps will get you to the end result.
So now as an agency, you said it had 8 offices?
Yes.
Now you will, right? Yes. From the, kind of the eastern side of the Florida panhandle, right? All the way to near New Orleans.
Yes.
And so how do you manage 300 people? You got probably 100 people in leadership or 150 people in leadership. You guys are always building and growing. Like, how do you manage that and sustain it and continue to grow year in and year out?
Yeah. And I'll tell you, Keith's done a great job of this. It's not just me, and it's not just Keith. Somebody very smart that works for the company told me one time I need to spend 80% of my time developing my top 5 people.
Yeah.
And so that's something I took to heart, and I spend a lot.
I think that was Steve. That wasn't me, right?
I spend a lot of time with our top 5 people.
Yeah.
And our top 5 people spend a lot of time with their top 5 people, and so on and so forth. And it takes a lot of delegation. It was tough, especially at first. It was a huge learning curve for me. But obviously with our support system and our agency, it went over pretty well. But it's just delegating and developing others to be able to essentially replace yourself. That makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. What's interesting is when I go to your agency, it's got such a consistent look and feel at any of the offices. And what's kind of incredible about that is we've got locations like Petal, Mississippi, which everyone is, they know exactly how to get there, right?
Yes.
Ocean Springs, Mississippi, Mobile. You got Pensacola, which are larger, some larger markets, but you have some larger markets, some smaller markets.
Yeah.
But everything's just consistent. How do you do that? How do you find the top talent? How do you keep it consistent? How do you maintain that culture that you guys have built?
You said top talent, and I'm a firm believer in the 10-80-10. 10% of people, unfortunately, just aren't cut out for it. 10% are going to make it with you, Mike, or
no matter what.
It's what we do with that 80% of people really defines not just our leadership style, our leadership skills, but our agency.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't necessarily say it's top people. It's ordinary people that are coming into our agency, buying into a vision, and we have a system and process in place that many, many years of work has taken to get it there. And we're essentially just feeding that system and providing an opportunity. Do we fail? Yeah, every day. But I like to say if we're not failing, if we don't have these problems, it means we don't have enough people.
Yeah.
It's that simple. So it's just ordinary people just like me and you, coming in, buying into the vision and sticking to the process.
Yeah,
as simple as that sounds, and Keith did a phenomenal job at this early on in his career of keeping it simple. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. Think about what we do. We protect families and we provide people with opportunities. Let's find a simple way, like you say at 101, let's find the simplest way to be able to do that to generate a consistent result.
Yeah.
And that's what, unfortunately, right now in our agency, we're doing.
Yeah. And sometimes that's the hardest thing is convincing the people that you're leading to keep it simple, right? Because we want to complicate it. We want to make it all these
things that it's not.
Yeah. And, if you just guard that system, right, this is the way that it works, plug and play, and hold people accountable to doing what is necessary for success, that's where it goes.
Yep.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, John David, thank you for coming in today and sharing your experience here of kind of growing up in Liberty and then finding your way and then finding your way back. And it's just great little nuggets and insights that I think people are gonna be able to pull from.
Awesome. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So if you were to think like when you were a kid growing up, would you have ever thought like, your parents are, they're living this life, they're with Liberty National. Would you have ever thought like, man, one day I'm going to be a partner in a $12 million organization. They're going to fly me down here and film a podcast and, talk about all the success, right? We have ever.
Mike, no way.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
It's cool to see, the hard work. And I said this the other day, like Liberty National is my family.
Yeah.
And so family and business sometimes doesn't mix.
Sure.
Well, that's hard for me because Liberty National, like I said, it is my family. And working with my family every day is awesome. But seeing the work that my mom put in, I remember being 2 or 3 years old and her having 10 kids running a daycare at our house. My dad was out working, trying to make it.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, there's nothing in life that's worth it. That's easy. It's hard work and dedication, and to see that come to fruition and now be able to build on the shoulders of the path that he has paved for not just myself, many people in our agency. I'm lucky to be a part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're lucky to have you here at the company. You talk about working with your family. I heard a story about one time when your parents were away and you were not with the company. And it was something about a ping pong table and the convention.
Yeah. I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Yeah, I heard about that, right? But,
So they went to convention. I always loved convention growing up because that was like a week without my parents. Right? So I was always coming in.
They thought they could trust the kids.
Yeah. Tuesdays at 1 o'clock, I was calling Dad. What's the numbers looking like? You qualified for convention? What's going on, right? So me and the baseball team really liked convention.
Yeah.
They were always wondering, where are we going this year for what's it used to be called Torch Club?
Right.
Where are we going for convention this year? But we had a get together, friendly get together during convention. We had our own convention.
It was the kids convention. Right?
We had our own convention, and my mom was
at your house, right? While the parents are gone
at their house, at our house, and my parents were at convention. And this kid, it was pretty big get together. Somebody came in from 45 miles away.
What threw it off at first was when they came home and there was a ping pong table.
Yeah, the ping pong table. So they came home and they're like, what's this ping pong table on the back porch? And we were like, oh, we had a ping pong tournament, Dad. Like everything was good. And I don't know.
There's no net on the ping pong table, right?
I don't know if he believed it, but Mom was like, oh, great. Who won?
Right.
We got to clean up the evidence. That following Monday, Mom drives 45 minutes outside the city and to enroll a worksite case. And she's there and she's like, oh my gosh, Miss Mitchell, the guy she was talking to was like, Miss Mitchell, my son went to a party at your house and said he had the greatest time. And she was like, what? When? Like, oh, this past weekend. You said I had a great time at your house. And so, I didn't have much luck after that. I was grounded, I would say.
So the conventions changed after that point, right?
I had like chaperone conventions. The grandparents started coming in. So it really wasn't that fun.
Well, but that's the benefit of growing up in the company, right? You had that good while it lasted. So
no doubt.
Well, John David, I appreciate you coming in and sharing your experience. We do have one last thing. All the guests, as you can see, receive their own bobblehead to commemorate their appearance on the Level Up Lifestyle podcast. Unfortunately, we won't get into the political situation of where bobbleheads come from and the climate of shipping internationally and all that. But we do not have your bobblehead ready. It will be ready. Maybe depending on when it's ready, we could do a little swipe here post production of what that bobblehead looks like.
Awesome. Yeah.
But you will be receiving it.
Great.
Your dad's over here somewhere. He's been listening to us, so he's back behind me. Okay.
I noticed that with the white hair and the little bigger head.
Yeah, it kind of stands out, right? So, if you were to say that kind of the bobblehead representation of who you are today agency owner, tremendous success, doing a phenomenal job. If you could take the experience of and knowledge that you have today and go tell yourself something earlier on in life, it could be at that moment where you're starting to work. By the way, did you have to tell the guy you were going to work for Liberty National after 5 years?
I didn't. He transferred like regions.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you didn't have to have that conversation.
But
right?
I had to tell his best friend.
Okay.
So,
I'm sure it got back. I'm sure it got back to him. Yeah, it got back. So if you were to like at that moment, like when you're going down a different path, or when you're in Houston and you're just, man, I'm just not sure. Like, what would you tell yourself back then based on what you know now?
Yeah. The thing to do still now, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, right, is the salary plus commission, go to college, all that's great. I think that has a lot to do with
Gave you a lot of life lessons.
Yeah. That's why I'm sitting here right now.
Sure.
But the one thing I would tell myself, somebody coming into the business, is the time is now. Okay. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. You're in 100% commissions job. You're going to be faced with adversity. You signed up to be faced with adversity. Put your head down, go to work for 6, 8, 10 months. Look at your bank account now and then look at it 6, 8, 10 months from now, and you'll never have to worry about your finances again. If you continue to consistently put the work in each and every day. The only thing that is holding you back in this business, I'm a firm believer of this, is yourself every day.
Absolutely. All right. Well, John David, thanks for coming in. It was great to talk to you.
Thank you, guys. Enjoyed it.
All right. We'll catch you guys on the next episode.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope this episode has inspired you on your path to success. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next story. See you soon on the Level Up Lifestyle Podcast.